Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and investors who are interested in things that are kind of somewhat related to scrapping and recycling in the stock world. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we talk about precious metals, industrial metals, and the stock market, along with business tips and safety tips and stuff like that. Yes, it's that time of year again. And our shark or ocean tree is set up in the office. Look at that. Isn't that something? Mrs. Shark always does such an awesome job with our Christmas decorations, our holiday decorations around here. Just it's gorgeous. I mean, we've got 7 trees up. The house is decorated beautifully. We love this time of year. Absolutely love it. It is great to be here. Scrapping Irish, welcome. Andrew Powell from New Zealand is going to be in and out. He's got stuff he's working on. It's very early in the morning over there in New Zealand. JR Cat, welcome. Electronic Scrapper, welcome. Great to have everybody here. So I'm going to let the tree, kind of go here for a little bit. And in a few minutes, we get a few more people into the stream, we can go take a closer look at at some of the ornaments that are on the tree. And of course, we've got our Mako Speed sign in the background there. So that was a nice gift from our friends up north. Jose, welcome. That's right, recycling. Welcome. It is that time of year, and it's funny that the outside decorations are frequently a bit odd here in Florida because people have to figure out how to decorate their palm trees. So that's always a little bit interesting. All right, well, we're going to jump right into our precious metals as we discussed. Or as was on the title, we're diving into gold today. We haven't talked about gold for a little bit, so thought we would jump right into gold. Now, disclaimer, I do not get any compensation from NYMEX. I am not sponsored by them. I just have used NYMEX, and it's one of my preferred places when I buy gold and silver bullion. Very reputable company to do business with, no drama. So I love buying from them. I also buy from Kitco, JM Bullion, some of the other sites, but NYMEX is one of my preferred. So what's going on with gold? Well, here's the 24-hour chart, and we are down a little bit, as you can see. Now, that was off of a 2006-ish high, and it's down to 199.5, 199.370 here. So it's not that huge a change, but anytime you go past that big number like 2000, it's like all of a sudden there's oh no, what's going on? If we look at the 3-day, we see that we are down 0.21%. So we had a nice climb here, and then we dropped off again. So I think a lot of that was because there were some good comments coming out of the Fed Bank people, talking about the strength of the economy. There's not going to be another interest rate hike, soft landing, the kind of words that, for some people are really good news. They like to hear that. For investors in gold, they're like, oh, rats. That means gold's going to go down. But for the week it was up, and we can see here we had sort of these platform spikes, right? It jumped, it platformed, it jumped, it platformed, it jumped, it's platforming. So who knows? Maybe we'll get another jump up here at some point. Moving forward, there's so many strange things happening in the world right now because, as we all know, the price of gold is driven more by its investment value. And people turn to gold when they're trying to get some hedge against inflation, when they're trying to get some surety in a volatile market. and there's just a lot of weird stuff happening out there in the world right now. So we may see some more people coming back to gold. Hopefully, this does not drive down the gold value for our scrap. So things like our PC motherboards and our RAM and those kind of things that the primary value is the gold that's in them. So hopefully, this is not going to have a negative impact on those values. So I wouldn't expect to see anything right away, but I'm sure this is getting the attention of folks that buy e-scrap. And I'm sorry, I saw this. I had to bring this up. That's right. Recycling says he has a good amount of Irish sucker sticks now. Yep, you gotta keep stocking up on your Irish sucker sticks. Hey, Mike, great to have you here, man. All right, so moving right along with gold, we see that for the month we're still up, not that much, 0.6%. We had a little dip here and we climbed back out of it, so that's always good to see. And for the 3-month, we are up 2%. So, you know, this is all good because this kind of signal motivates people like Board Sort and the other buyers of e-scrap to keep those gold scrap prices higher for us, the e-scrap prices. Year to date, we are up 8.8%. That's really nice. And for the 1 year period, we're up 20%. Really hard to argue with these numbers. You got to love this. So this is all good news for us. Oh, by the way, JR Cat says that he's up to 3 pounds of Irish sucker sticks. That's great, man. Y'all are doing good for your Irish sucker sticks. All right, so that's our gold situation, and what are you all doing now? I would ask if you're going to buy gold, but at these kind of prices, I'm not going to be buying gold bullion or gold rounds or anything like that right now. But I'm looking forward to keeping my gold e-scrap moving, and I've got quite a bit of stuff that I need to get boxed up and shipped off to Board Sort here. So got a lot ready to go here. Robert Knudsen, welcome. Great to have you here. My day is going awesome. Anytime that I can come up on a live stream and chat with everybody, it is great. Yeah, you know what? I wonder if you can do that. Can you copyright Irish sucker sticks? We'll have to, split the rights, the royalties from it. But go for it, man. I'm good with that. Oh my, oh man. All right, so back to our discussion of the tree. Now, if I do this right, we're going to find out. We're gonna take a little walk around the tree here. So hang on just a minute, and I'm going to see if I can do this without All right. Well, that was fun. And let me get this turned off here real quick. All right. So, by the way, if you're wondering what I did there, I saw this trick recently, and I thought it was really cool. So this was my first time trying it. So I sent a link to my phone to join the stream, and then I had the stream join the phone as if it was another person, and that allowed me to give you that close up of the tree and another angle. So it, basically the phone acting like another camera without having to connect it through some camera device. So kind of an interesting trick. I'll play around with that a little bit more as well in the future. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. All right, so let's see. Jose is asking, sir, if you can remember how to remove silver from the copper relay. My wife had a tool that put on snap buttons, and it was a small punch to remove them. And that makes his job, and here we are, and that makes his job much easier. Oh, okay. Very cool. I don't mess around with pulling the silver buttons off of copper relays. It's just not something I really get into. But for those that are out there that do that, you might want to, drop a note to Jose and try to learn more about that tool that he's talking about. Urban Prospector is saying he's done work early so he can enjoy the live. Well, that's awesome. Welcome. I'm glad that you're able to do that. Patrick Williams, welcome. Great to have you here. All right, so our safety note today was a recommendation from Chris at boardsort.com. Hey, Grandpa Kevin, how you doing, man? Hello, Roger. Welcome. Great to have you here. So Chris at boardsort.com sent me a note during the week, and he gave me a great suggestion for a safety tip for the week, and it has to do with cutting things. So, and this is the note that he said was, I think, a little more directed at cutting open boxes, the way he kind of made some comments about cutting things, but cutting in general. There are some important safety tips that are good to learn. I think most of us probably learned these when we were in Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or Girl Scouts. Knife safety, right? So probably the most important thing when it comes to knife safety is to cut away from your body parts. And always remember what's in front of the knife blade. So, I see people sometimes that will hold a box, let's say this is the knife, and they hold the box like this, and then they cut, they're cutting like this towards their fingers, which is never a good thing. Because yes, that's what happens, Homer's Odyssey, fingers in Band-Aids. So, of course, the thing to do is to cut away from your fingers, preferably going sideways so that you're also going away from your own body. But it's kind of a little difficult when, if you're pulling a blade back like this, it's kind of hard to hit yourself with a blade, unless, of course, you've got it pointed weird. Bottom line, you always want to try to cut away from your body and not towards any digits or other people. Another thing that a lot of people find counterintuitive, but it is actually very true, is that the sharper the blade, the safer, because it will go through things much smoother and faster. You don't get the jerky kind of cuts that could cause the blade to pop out and become uncontrolled. Other kind of, things that the blade can, some blades, I've seen them, they're all nicked up and bent, and they can get caught on things, and, can make it really hard then to do your cuts. So the sharper the blade, the better. I'm not going to tell you how to sharpen your blades because there's bazillions of ways and tools and things like that. Plus, God knows how many videos out there about how to sharpen blades and stuff. So, always try to keep your blades as sharp as you can. Now, a couple of interesting knife safety tips that my wife learned when she was in culinary school are, some things like you don't walk around with an exposed blade. Now, you can imagine how important this is in a kitchen, especially a commercial kitchen where you have a number of cooks and prep chefs and folks walking around. If somebody was walking around with a knife, it could be very easy to literally walk into a knife blade. So when they're in the kitchens, they don't walk around with an exposed knife blade. And if you are walking behind someone who is cutting something, you at a minimum, you will say behind you so that they know that there's someone behind them. And frequently what my wife would do would also be to put her hand on their back or on their shoulder or something like that, as she said, behind you, so that they knew that she was back there. So if you're working with other people in the shop, that's where it becomes important. If you are with other people in your shop and they're cutting something, you want to make sure that they know that you're coming behind them, especially if they're working with a knife, but also any kind of power tool, right? A grinder or a sawzall or something like that. You don't want them turning around with the thing and, cutting you because they didn't know you were there. So what other sharp object cutting kind of safety tips have you all thought about while I was bringing these up? Go ahead and drop them in the comments down below, because I'm sure that a lot of us have been exposed to and learned some really important safety tips over the years. And I'm pretty sure that we've all broken just about all of those safety tips at one point or another, and usually resulted in either cutting ourselves or someone else. So JCT, welcome. Great to have you here. Let's see, what's this one? Just more paperwork on how dumb your JR Cat. That's harsh, man. That's harsh. But yeah, that can be, and of course it's a lot different too. When we cut ourselves in our shops, it's not a health, it hurts. And assuming you haven't cut yourself, not too bad, right? A little blood is no big deal, right? In fact, our good friend Ian Matthews would claim that that's how we pay the scrap gods for the material that we get. In a commercial kitchen, of course, you have a different issue, because if you cut yourself and you're bleeding, you can't be serving food that you bled onto. Now you got to bandage up your finger and wrap it in gloves and stuff like that. And it gets even harder then to do your job. So you can imagine getting cut in a commercial kitchen is just a real pain in the patootis. So, the other thing that I have seen some people will do, and I got to admit, I've been guilty of this too, is to take the knife blade. If you're going to strip some wire or something, you take the knife blade, you take the wire and you put your thumb over it, and then you kind of pull it along like that. And that is all well and good until you hit a kink in the wire or, some sort of defect in the wire. And then the wire slips from between your thumb and you've got that momentum going. And now that blade goes right into your thumb. That one, that one probably got some people's hackles up right away, because I'm sure there's some of you who are saying, well, what do you mean? That's how I strip my wire. It's perfectly safe until it's not, right? And they make gloves. A lot of fishermen wear these gloves. They're like chainmail gloves, and you put that on the hand that is potentially going to get hit by a blade to help protect your hand. So when you're filleting fish and stuff like that, those kind of chainmail gloves can be very useful. That's another option too. Why, yes, Bill, sharks on a Christmas tree. Absolutely. Why wouldn't there be sharks on a Christmas tree? All right. So knife safety, please be careful with those knives and always pay attention to not only your own digits, but human and other bodies that are around you. All right, it is time to get on to our industrial metal discussion. So we're going to head right over to the Kitco website. Now, remember, I am not sponsored by Kitco, and I received no compensation from them, but these are another one of the sites that I've used for buying and selling my precious metals, and I like the charts that I can get access to from Kitco. Unfortunately, we have to deal with some of these advertisements. So Tom makes an announcement that everyone's been waiting for. All right, that's nice. And Lending Tree wants to get your money to refinance. So yeah, go spend some money with Lending Tree, I guess. I don't know. Go away, Lending Tree. There we go. Copper. Our 24-hour copper spot price down just a touch. We had been climbing and we went down a little bit, so we'll see what plays out. But here's what I really like. Look at this 30-day chart. This is what we want to see for copper prices. It's starting to climb. Now, don't get too terribly excited because look at these numbers. I don't know if you can see these, 3.5931. And it's all the way up to 3.7205. So that's US dollars per pound. We didn't really go up a whole lot. But hey, we're going up, right? That's what we want to see. We're going up on the 30-day. Of course, if you look at it from a 60-day perspective, it completely washes out, right? You know, you just can't even see it, that climb. Just barely, you know, this is the 60-day. You look at the 30 days, you just barely see that little upward trend right there. But, you know, still, it's better than what we've been dealing with, right? At least it looks like it's trying to get back up there a little bit. On the 6 month, you know, just not a whole lot of you know, we saw some rises and dips, but, you know, if you really, that's kind of almost flat with the exception of this spike in here, but this is nothing to, you know, copper's just doing what it's just hanging, right? And for the 1 year, again, up a little bit, but you know, we had some nice teaser growth here, and then it started falling off. So hopefully we're back into a little bit of pick me up out here. And here's our 5 year. Yeah, we're up for the 5 year, but we've got a lot of recovery to do to get back up near these highs again. So let's look at this inventory. Let's see what is going on. And this brings me to another thing that I wanted to talk about today. I've had a couple people ask me about this, and it is something that, you know, is worth is just have a little understanding. These first few charts come up. These are COMEX copper warehouse levels. And you frequently see me refer to the London Metal Exchange copper warehouse levels. So what's the difference between London Metal Exchange and COMEX? And why would COMEX exchange show a decreasing inventory of copper, and the London Metal Exchange shows, you know, it dropped off but then started coming back up? Well, the simple answer is they're two completely different exchanges. It's two completely different entities that people are buying, selling, trading copper through. And another one of the things is that on the London Metal Exchange, you don't get as much of a physical delivery at the end of the period. So what will happen is, you know, folks will go on the London Metal Exchange. They want to sell a bunch of copper or buy a bunch of copper, and, you know, they bid on it. You know, and this is where futures trading gets involved. And, you know, none of us are going to play this game, but, you know, the big folks, they're playing this game, and, you know, they'll buy 25 tons or whatever. Well, when the bill comes due and it's paid, it may or may not be paid in actual physical metal that gets delivered to a London Metal Exchange location. I mean, they have locations all over the world, and yes, there are physical deliveries that get made, but that's not always the case. And the COMEX is a completely different exchange. And so they have a little bit different rules, and, you know, the metals are traded a little bit differently. And again, you know, obvious differences. London Metal Exchange is going US dollars per metric ton. And, usually they're talking lots of 25 metric tons. COMEX is operating in dollars per pound. Both of these exchanges are also moving towards what are purely, I'm going to call them phantom exchanges, digital exchanges, where you can actually bid on many lots of, say, copper and never have to deliver or pick up any true copper at all. It's all just purely an exchange of, here's what I think this copper is going to be worth a month from now. And then a month from now, you either pay some money or get paid money, So the reason why we see these differences is because they are actually two different exchanges with different customers and clients that are moving copper in and out. And these are not the only exchanges in the world. There's the Shanghai, there's others. So a lot of people will use the COMEX or the London Metal Exchange warehouse stock levels as a way to gauge the amount of copper that is available in inventory for their security, for hedging their bets, those kind of things. But it's very important to understand that this isn't truly the only copper that's out there. There are other exchanges, and there are also copper that's being traded not through the exchanges. So this is representative, but not absolute. So when we look at the 30-day London Metal Exchange, we see that inventory has dropped off, started picking up again. If we look at the 60-day, here was that 30-day, here's the 30-day period over here. So here's that drop and climb that we talked about. But we had inventory levels climbing, dropped off a little bit, which led to some of the stabilization in the tiny little increases in pricing. And now the inventories are picking back up again. So, there's probably not going to be a lot of longevity to any price increases. Probably just going to stay flat here for a while. 6-month London Metal Exchange inventory dropped off early on, but has generally been climbing. So, basically the inventories they're stocking up. There's more metal going into inventory than is being consumed. And 1-year copper warehouse levels, we see that while there was some early volatility around a relatively flat level, basically near the end of the year, they've just been loading up on copper. 5-year, we've got some nice patterns going on here. And there are folks that will do the statistical analysis on this and try to average out these nice smooth curves to help them make some bets on future prices and things like that. What I look at from our perspective is that all of these peaks are going down. So the tops of the inventory levels are all going down, which means that overall we're kind of consuming copper for the last 5 years, and the troughs are going lower so that they're not even replenishing the inventories as much as they had been. Now, for us, that's a good thing, because that means that even though there isn't a great price on copper right now, we are generally, worldwide in the long term, consuming copper faster than we're storing it up. And as the electrification transformations really start to pick up steam, we're going to see more and more copper get consumed and used up. It's still very early in that, what they refer to as a super cycle. And we've talked about this before, where copper used to be locked into what they call the China super cycle, all based on the China economy. When the Chinese economy was cranking and they were building houses and making product, boy, they were using copper like crazy and consuming copper. China, crashed during the pandemic. They've had a hard time coming out of that pandemic. And so they're not consuming copper the way they were. And that has had a negative influence, as far as we're concerned, as scrappers, a negative influence on copper prices. So will the electrification super cycle be strong enough and send a high enough demand that we'll see copper prices rebound for us. And that's what a lot of us are going to have to make some decisions. That comes down to, in some cases, we're all trying to make a guess on whether or not the electrification super cycle is really going to kick in. And if it is really going to kick in, when is it going to kick in? My personal thoughts are that, yes, we will see the electrification super cycle take over and become the dominant signal, but it's going to take a little while. It's going to be a slow but steady overtaking of the China super cycle. So what does that mean for all of us? We're in the copper business. What are we doing, right? We're scrappers. Copper is a big, for us, can be a substantial source of revenue. Well, my philosophy hasn't changed. This is what I've been recommending, since a year ago when I started doing this. Try to hold about 10% of your copper behind. Your number one copper, your Bear Bright, you can get those so they don't take up a whole lot of space for the weight that you're getting for them. So they're very good things to hold on to as a strategic reserve, and then sell your lower end coppers, your number two your insulated copper wire, or let me rephrase that, your number two copper and your insulated copper wires, sell those for your cash flow. Now, that's if you need the cash flow. If you're just doing this as a hobby and you don't need cash flow and you have the space, go ahead and hold on to as much as you can, because I honestly believe we're going to see an eventual recovery in copper prices. And then it's just a question of how long and how much copper can you hang on to. Now, for me, I've got a business. I've got to pay the bills. I've got lease payments to make. I've got utility payments to make. I've got insurance payments to make. So I need to keep cash flow moving. So that's why I retain 10% of my copper as a strategic reserve and then sell the rest in order to meet my cash flow. So I am curious to see what you guys have been doing with your copper and how your prices have been and where things have been going for you. So let's see. Patrick's jumping in here. Bear Bright, €7. Number two, 6.5. Household cable is up 20 cents a kilo. Very cool. Very cool. I'm not going to try to do the math in the conversions because I'll screw it up for sure, but y'all feel free to go do the conversions there so that you can take a look at how those prices compare for you. Let's see. What is Homer's Reluctant Honesty? He's got slammed with copper yesterday at his yard after a 10-cent boost in price. So a bunch of people must have been waiting for the prices to go up. They boosted the prices and you got nailed. So that's pretty cool. So, that's good for your peddlers, good for your folks bringing in their scrap, right? Patrick Williams, hold is 170 from 150. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to remember here. Wait a minute. Let me look real quick, and if I can, I don't believe that. Yeah, no, I didn't. My last non-ferrous run, I had some copper motors, but most of my last run was aluminum. So I don't have I would be hesitant to give you any pricing from my local non-ferrous yard. And they don't change their prices a lot anyway. So, they try to hold their prices as steady as they can, which means that sometimes they're eating it and sometimes they're making it. But my last run was mostly all aluminum. So I don't have a lot of copper recent pricing to be able to share. And Homer's Reluctant Odyssey follows up his comment with, "It's cool, except I have to sort it." So what? Do you guys just buy it do you just have the one price for copper and then you sort it later on, or are you paying your peddlers, for number one, number two, for the insulated, as they sell it to you? If you don't mind me asking, and if you're allowed to share it. If you're not allowed to share it, that's cool. I understand. Some businesses don't like to share all their information. Urban Prospector saying, holding all my copper, but turning in my lead acid batteries to make some more room. 843 pounds of batteries this week. Holy bajoli. Man, that's a lot of batteries. It's $101. Yeah, you're only getting 12 cents a pound. That's kind of about what I'm getting too for lead acid batteries, something like that. So, yeah, some of those, especially like if these are car batteries, man, those things can take up a lot of space. So yeah, I understand you need to get those moving and get those over to the yard. It's funny. When I was at the ISRI Southeast Region Conference 2 weeks ago, I spoke to a company that scraps batteries. I mean, they are the place. They buy the lead acid batteries from a lot of the yards in the Southeast region. And they were telling me about their process, and it's really kind of cool. And when you think about it, it makes perfectly good sense, right? The batteries go on a belt, and they go up to this first punch place that is just punching holes in the bottom of the batteries, so that the acid drains out of the batteries as it moves along to the next location. The next location is more of a shredder that actually shreds up the batteries so that they're separating the plastic shell from the lead. And then the lead can then get recycled and melted down and reused as lead in other batteries and such. So you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? Once you take your cabling, your wiring off of the batteries, and they said that's their main human touch point, is removing any residual copper wires that may still be left on the batteries. But other than that, yeah, you bust them open, drain the acid, then separate the plastic from the lead. And those are the three components, right? Lead, plastic, and acid. So they were also telling me that they recycle the acid. So they take the acid and they turn it into water. They neutralize it down to water. Then they have their own water treatment processing plant. So they process it into clean water, and then they sell that clean water back to the local government. Did you sell it or they give it? I don't remember. But anyway, that water then goes into the local water supply, where it is treated again at the municipal water supply system before it moves on. The guy said that water is so clean. He said they've run fish tanks off of it. So he said when they get done treating the water, they take the acid, they turn it into water, they remove all of the contaminants from the water, and they've been able to keep fish alive in aquariums, using the water that they produce that used to be battery acid. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's see what's Jose saying. And he thought he was getting low on batteries at 45 cents a pound. So yeah, wow, man, down in Miami, that's a good price down in Miami, man. That really is. Let's see. So that's very nasty lead, lots of contaminants in it. I don't know what they do to then process the lead itself. We didn't go into a lot of discussions about, what they do with the lead, how they're processing the lead and, that kind of thing. But I just thought it was pretty cool, that the way their system was functioning there. All right. Hey, Scorpion Metals, welcome. Great to have you here. I don't know if you can see it in that angle or not, but right over there is your Mako speed board. The light isn't real good on it, but your Mako speed board is right down there. Okay, so our business note for today is it's a note for we're coming on the end of the year. You've got, if you're running a business right now, you are probably working on a fiscal year that ends at the end of December. Now, for those of you that haven't been in the wonderful world of business, some businesses will have their fiscal year, FISCAL, fiscal year, end on different months of the year for various reasons. The IRS basically says, you can end your fiscal year anytime you want. You just need to tell us when your fiscal year ends. And that's important for dealing with your taxes. And of course, some of it depends too on what kind of structure you have set up. Now, as a relatively simple LLC being treated as an S corporation, I've just chosen to go with the calendar year as my fiscal year. So my fiscal year will end the end of December. So I've got about 2 months now where I am going to be cleaning up my books. Hey, Rafael, great to see you, man. Great to have you here. CC Scraps, great to have you here. It's cleaning up your books kind of sounds a little bit fishy, right? But I think you all know, especially if you're doing this as a business, you understand some of what goes on here, right? You've got, it's not just the things that you spent money for this and you made money for this, but you also have to characterize some of the things that you spent your money on, because you need to be able to separate things like your travel expenses from your advertising expenses, from legal expenses, from the buying of the goods, and these are legitimate business expenses, and the IRS is pretty flexible in what they define as a legitimate business expense. You've got to be able to, you may have to, if you get audited, you may have to prove that, yeah, that was a legitimate business expense, but you want to characterize them properly. So for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I went to the Southeast Region ISRI conference, the Institute for Scrap and Recycling Industries. Those travel expenses were legitimate business expenses for me. So, I don't take the fuel costs for the Sharkmobile. I take a mileage rate. The IRS says, you get X number of cents a mile for, to claim on your taxes. Just to make it simple, that's what I do. So I keep a log of the miles that I put on the shark cage. But during that time, my meals were business expenses. The hotel was a business expense. The registration was a business expense. So I need to make sure I've captured all of that accurately and go through my records and for the year and make sure that those expenses are properly captured. And then there's a few other things that I have to make sure that I've properly captured. The costs for my web page, the host fees that I pay, the prices that I pay for things like my StreamYard subscription and those kind of things. So I'm going to, try to spend the next couple of months making sure that I have accurately captured all of those expenses so that when I send those files over to my CPA, it's easy for her to put it all together and prepare my taxes. The easier I make it for my CPA, the less it costs me because the less time they spend putting my taxes together. So there's a that benefit. And there's also just sometimes you don't think about some of these things in the day-to-day and in the rush, and you're grinding through, and you're taking stuff apart, and you're selling stuff to the scrapyard, and you're bringing in new stuff, and you just get lost in the day-to-day and you lose track of that big picture. So really important that you take these next couple months and just make sure that you've gone through your books and tried to clean them up so that you can, when you hand them off to your CPA or when you do your taxes yourself, you understand what you're filing and why you're filing it. And then of course you also need those numbers just to see for yourself how you're doing. You want to know if you are improving. Are you meeting your strategic goals for your business? Are you making the money that you think you're going to make? those kind of things that are important for any kind of business consideration. All right, so let's see. Rafael is saying that you're right, business income meltdown very fast compared to legal expenses and any attempt to upgrade your business. Yeah, it's really, because let's face it, this scrapping industry is very capital intensive, right? When you hear people say capital cost, capital intensive, what that means is the money that you're spending on stuff. You've got, and capital can be a little bit relative term depending upon the size of your business, right? But a perfect example, if I buy a forklift, that's a capital expense, right? If I buy a new building or something, that's a capital expense, as opposed to my operating costs, my utility costs. Utility costs are not a capital expense. That's your utility costs. Your legal fees are not a capital expense. They're legal fees. So your capital expense are the things that you need, the building, the hardware, the tools to do your job. And those things can be very expensive in this business. Even your basic power tools, when you think about it, they can be kind of expensive. And when we're in this as a business, we can go through some tools. I mean, how many of you have had to go through a bunch of grinder blades? Now, again, that might be considered an operating cost depending upon how you've structured your business. But if you burn out your grinder and you have to keep buying a new grinder every 6 months, well, then you ought to be thinking about buying a DeWalt instead of some cheap crap that you're getting off. No, don't go there, Sharky. Stop it. But anyway, this is a very capital intensive business. And now upgrade from the likes of us that are doing this as a small business and upgrade to the big scrap yards that have their front end loaders and the big claws. And God, just think about the money that goes into this business. It's amazing. So anyway, hey, Stock Explorer, welcome. I'm glad that you were here. I hope you were here for the stock discussion. Oh, you are here for the discussion because that's where we're going right now. So we're going to head right over to our first stock of the day. It is UPS. And I know that some of you are probably scratching your head and you're saying to yourself, wait a minute. The title said aviation or restaurants, right? Fly or food. UPS in the Value Line Assessment Investment Survey, which is what I use for my stock data, the Value Line Investment Survey categorizes UPS with the air transportation industry because, well, they use most of the airplanes. Now we see their trucks and everything all over the place, but they're flying a lot of stuff all over the world. So they are considered part of the aviation industry. Now we can see here they've got a real nice dividend at 4.6%, and this was 2 days ago. So when this was posted, and that's on a share price of $142.27. So a little bit expensive, not terribly expensive, but a little bit expensive, and it's actually a pretty nice interest on $142. So this is a reasonable thing to consider adding to your portfolio for your investment, for a dividend investment. Now, what's really nice is that they are qualified as a Div 1. So that means they had one flat year, and we see that one flat year right here, 2016 going into 17, the one flat year that they had. They're not qualified for cash flow or earnings per share, but that doesn't worry me that much because what I'm really interested in is the dividends. And if we look at the company if we look at this graphically, we see we had one slope that they were tracking on, and then they made this decision here in 2021 to bump the dividend, and then they got back on the normal slope again. So they were just rewarding investors here. You can see there was a really good year here for them, and they rewarded their investors with a nice little bump. Let's see what the Value Line people have to say. Now, remember, the analysts at the Value Line Investment Survey, they take no advertising. So this is straight data, numbers, and their analysis of those numbers, without any kind of biasing. What they're saying is that UPS is facing some challenging conditions here in the U.S. They had surrendered packaging volume to competitors back when there was some concern about union stuff and some strikes. So people shifted their carriers. Now they've resolved those issues, and UPS has been hard over trying to get customers back again and reaching out to folks. So they've been investing a pretty good slug of money into gaining their customers back again. So their average daily volume was down 15% in August. That rate improved, and they've won back about 40% of what had been diverted back when they were having those concerns. So they're getting the customers back again. Another one of the problems or challenges that they're facing is that a lot of stores are trying to get customers back into the stores again. So I'm sure that you can appreciate this. The more people go to stores to buy their stuff, then the less stuff is getting shipped. My wife doesn't believe in that, because I think between Amazon and UPS and FedEx, there's somebody showing up at the door every freaking day, sometimes multiple times a day. But that's beside the point. That's especially beside the point because a lot of times they're prizes for me. Anyway, they have some margin pressure that they're dealing with, but overall, the company is looking like it's in a pretty good position. And Value Line is saying that the UPS shares are suitable as income investment and for conservative investors. So, folks that want some relatively safe places to put their money. I do not own shares of UPS right now. I have owned shares of UPS in the past, and I'm not going out and actively adding to my portfolio right now because, as a lot of you know, early next year I'm going to be moving. So I am in the position of building up my cash positions so that I have the resources available to support relocating the business and relocating the house. I'm not going to relocate the house. I'm just going to relocate the house that I'll be living in, just moving. Yeah, we're not going to move the house. All right, so UPS. Now, here's where we shift to the food companies. We are now going to head over to the restaurant business. And our first restaurant that we're going to be taking a look at here is McDonald's. Now, remember, when we talk about these stocks, this isn't about, do you like to eat at McDonald's? Do you like their food? Do you not like their food? Do you have a preference in fast food places? We're looking at these as business decisions, investment decisions. So whether you eat at McDonald's or not, whether you like McDonald's or not, let's look at them as a company, as a place to invest your money. Well, one of the first things you see here is their dividend yield is 2.5%. And that's on a pretty hefty 268, almost 269 share. So, 2.5% of a $269 investment. Yeah, it's pretty nice money, but you're only getting 2.5%. But look at this. They're not qualified for cash flow or earnings, but these are really not bad numbers here. They've only had 2 years that they failed for their cash flow per share. And they only had 3 where they failed on their earnings per share. So for the last 17 years, their cash flow per share has gone up every year but 2 years. And their earnings per share went up every year but 3 years. So that's really not that bad. And their dividends went up every year for the last 17 years. And actually quite a bit longer than that. So as a matter of fact, I'm reading now from the Value Line Investment Survey, and they say that this is the 47th consecutive year that McDonald's has increased their dividends per share. So, from an investment perspective, that's a nice, comfortable place to put some cash. Now, let's get, this is important to think about. You're not going to be beating it you're not beating inflation at 2.5%. Generally speaking, you think about inflation being in the 4% range, right? So if you're not earning over 4%, then technically you're going to be losing money on this investment. But you've also got the share price when you do eventually sell the stock. If you've invested properly, it's going to be worth a lot more than what you bought it for. So there are sort of mixed reasons that you would own a stock like McDonald's. So bottom line here, McDonald's has good geographic diversification. They can weather most economic slowdowns. We believe the reduced share price represents a worthwhile opportunity to conservative investors with a long view going out to 2026 and 28. So, what they're saying is, if you want to put some money into this and wait until 26 or 28 before you sell it, you're probably going to make some money on the action. So that is McDonald's. And then the other company that, it's like, hey, I don't know about you all, but I'm on the road a lot doing pickups and, taking things to the yard and selling them. And it's not at all uncommon for me to have to grab something either to eat or pick me up while I'm on the road. So between McDonald's and Starbucks, I will admit it, I put some money into these folks. So here's Starbucks at 2.2%. Now the share price is a little better here. We're talking $104 a share. And some of you steely-eyed members of the Shiver are right away going to point out, hey, Shark, they're not qualified. Look at that right there. It's a Div 2, right? So they've got 2 flat years, and you keep saying that it's got to be increasing every year. You might let them get away with 1 year. So what's going on here? Well, because next year, right, when we transition, we're going to start forecasting out to 2025. These 2007 numbers will come off the list, and so this will become a Div 1. So we will have next year Starbucks will be technically qualified by my standard. So that's why I wanted to bring them to your attention right now. So let's talk about Starbucks a little bit. It's funny. I have a friend of mine. I used to we were in business together. Well, we worked for the same company and used to travel to trade shows and events together a lot. He used to tell me he used to refer to Starbucks as Star Sucks. He just hated them. I mean, he did not like them at all. It's a rough one. He didn't like them. There's coffee is one of those things where it's such a personal kind of thing, right? But in this case, we're looking at it again. We're looking at it as the business. So, what does the Value Line Investment folks? They're talking about it. They said that their fourth quarter numbers were a pleasant surprise. Their top line rose 11%. Listen to this number. They recorded $9.4 billion in global comparable store sales. They increased 8%. Oh my God. Think about that kind of money, that kind of number. That's a lot of coffee. That's just a lot of coffee. I also find it interesting that China is the largest market besides the United States for Starbucks. So, and they had a 5% increase in comparable store sales in China, but the prices went down a little bit. So, that's just, to me, that's just amazing. That's just a crack up. So let's see. Shares of Starbucks may be of interest to some accounts. The stock is ranked highest for safety. Growth in dividend payout has been consistent, and the yield is respectable. It's not great, but it's respectable. Plus, demand for the company's products has stayed strong despite the high ticket prices. So I don't, you know, I got to admit, I had Starbucks stock a long time ago. I do not currently own any Starbucks stock. And as I mentioned, I'm not in the business of, making any acquisitions, big acquisitions right now for stocks because I'm busy consolidating cash for my upcoming move. But again, this is one of those things where you could put your money into Starbucks. You could have a certain sense of we're probably going to be okay here. If you wanted to get into the restaurant industry and you wanted to get some kind of dividends while you're moving, while you're hoping the price goes up, the two companies you want to look at, Starbucks, McDonald's. McDonald's is more expensive, but it might be the better place to put it. But then again, if you can't afford that $200+ a share, maybe Starbucks is a reasonable place to put it. So anyway, that's that's my cut on your restaurant industries. Now, I will let you all know that the other restaurant industries that were reviewed here. BJ's Restaurants, Bloomin' Brands, Brinker International Cheesecake Factory, which if you've ever watched Big Bang, that'll crack you up. Chipotle, Cracker Barrel, Darden, Dave & Buster's, Denny's, Dine Brands, Domino's, Jack in the Box, Papa John's, Restaurant Brands, Shake Shack, Texas Roadhouse, Wendy's, Wingstop, Yum Brands, and Yum China Holdings. So if you have questions about those, feel free to drop me a line. And for my Patreon members, if you would like me to do a more detailed analysis of any of the aviation stocks or the restaurant stocks, let me know. I'll be happy to put something up on our Patreon page for you all. Well, we have gone way over time here. And remember, if you have, wait a minute, what is this? Wait, what is this? What is this? You can't tell Shark is not drinking that. Yeah, I am drinking coffee right now. What was this? This is just black coffee. Black coffee, yeah. And I got a chuckle out of this other comment. USMC field coffee is better. It's funny. When I was in the Navy, of course, board ship, back when I was a young officer aboard ship, we didn't have the fancy coffee capabilities that they have on the ships now. You'd have the big 30 to 60 pot coffee urn. And if it hadn't boiled twice or three times during the watch, just wasn't any good. All right, y'all. If you have autoplay enabled, when I end this stream here in just a minute, it's going to take us across the pond to Ireland, where we will be joining Scrapping Irish, who is in process. If you do not have autoplay enabled, please go to YouTube, search for Scrapping Irish, and when his page comes up, you'll see that he's live, and you can click and join us on the live stream over in Ireland. Never know who's going to pop up on the panel, what we're going to talk about, because he has a very free form, flowing kind of discussion about scrap and such. And I can't wait to hear everybody come in and ask him about his Irish sucker strip. All right, everybody, we'll see you in Ireland in just a few.